What's going on, guys? Hey, it's Ben back at you again. I love all you guys that have subscribed so far. If you're not a subscriber currently, please hit the subscribe button down below. I would appreciate and love you so much. Thank you. So today, let's go into interviewing candidates. So now that you've got a bunch of clients, right, you're gonna have to provide them a bunch of candidates. And how do you do that? Well, you interview them. So we're talking general labor here. Most of these are gonna be phone screens before you send a candidate over to a client's office. So how it usually goes is I judge them on 3 or 4 certain criteria. It's usually the same for pretty much everybody with a few changes here and there. The first and foremost thing that I go over in my head with someone that I'm judging, yes, I am judging, is general demeanor. So basically this is general things about how the phone call goes. So for instance, when they pick up the phone, if they answer like, hello, like they're not expecting the call that we just set up over email, that's kind of a yellowish, reddish flag, right? But if they answer it like, hello, this is Ben, that's really, really good because I know and I can tell that they're expecting my call. Another really cool thing is if they just call me instead of me calling them. That shows a ton of proactivity, and that would give me a really good green light. General demeanor does not stop there. General demeanor is still being judged throughout the rest of the phone call. So it's mannerisms, it's how they talk, it's if they sound like they're high, if they sound like they're out of it, if they sound like they're half sleeping, like whatever, like that's all general demeanor. So somebody could be, using bad grammar, that's, bad demeanor. Somebody could be bad talking about their previous position or previous boss or, anyone personally. And, maybe they're talking about the next position, like the actual one you're interviewing them for. Maybe they're talking about it like a job hop. They're actually telling you like, yeah, might be something I could try out or something that would be good or whatever. You know what I mean? That's general demeanor about the position. You're going to want to jot that down. That's not a good candidate. So other things like general demeanor are going to be like just overall how the conversation ebbs and flows. So do you ask most of the questions and they give one-word answers, or do you make statements and questions and they make statements and questions back? Just like a regular flow of conversation between two normal people that just met over the phone. So your general demeanor is going to be all your basic stuff that you're going to want to keep in the back of your head for the rest of the phone call, because at the end of the day, what you're doing is stacking up on top of a foundation. So you're building a house here, kind of stacking this entire thing up and seeing if it's going to stand at the end of the phone call. So general demeanor is the first thing that we go over. The next thing is job specific knowledge. So this is going to be specific to whatever job they're going to be doing. So let's just say this person is going to be a van driver delivering flowers for a local company, a local warehouse. You're going to ask a few questions, leading questions, like what kind of vehicles have you been driving in your previous positions? And let them talk. Just shut up and let them talk. You're going to want to hear really specific knowledge about driving vans, or what warehouse work is like, or about loading the vans, unloading the vans, or finding addresses that are unique, or, driving history or any accidents. You're going to want to hear all of those things from them. And it's always good when you don't have to prompt that person to give you that information, but you just get that information anyway from them. That's the best. Because they're proactive, they're ready to tell you everything, and you're not asking them a question like, did you ever drive a 16-foot long van? And they say something like, yeah. In fact, the van I used to drive was a 16-foot long van. That's not a good question answer scenario. So long story short, job specific knowledge is going to be a mixture of things that are generic just about that job, but also things that are really specific. So you can actually go into the job description and pick off random items and ask them questions about them, but try to cherry pick them in different ways so that they're not just looking at the job description at the same time and just answering the question in the way that they think you want to hear the answer, because people can do that and throw the whole thing off. So job specific knowledge is a huge thing. The next thing I would do is past history positions. This is huge. So talking about your past history positions that you've had prior to this interview is massive. What did you do before this? So we're accomplishing basically like at least 2 big items by doing this. One, we're getting a little bit more general demeanor, and we're getting a little bit more job specific knowledge, and we're getting a little bit more insider information potentially about them as a person and why they may have left a job or been fired from a job potentially, and that sort of thing. So basically just talking about their past and previous job history is going to tell you a lot. If they're a person who's had like 6 jobs in the past year, that's probably a big red flag. If they're a person who's been fired from a job and they have a really elaborate like reason, like that goes above and beyond like a 5-minute explanation, it's most likely that they were fired for something that they did and they're just trying to explain it away the way they are in their own head. And they just want you to believe them and understand that and take that for what it is. But you don't have to. So that's why you're asking questions about it. So ask them why they left previous positions. Ask them how long they worked at a certain place. Ask them what they did there. Ask them, why was it just 3 months that you were here? Sometimes there's actually valid reasons that can add up. But again, you're building a foundation upon which you're going to look at the end to see if it's still standing. If the thing is not standing, you can't pass this off to a client. If it is still standing, sure, it's solid, has foundation, good, it's passable to the clients, and then we see what happens there. But past history and past jobs are a really good indicator of finding out what they're going to do in the future, because if you know their past, you can pretty much kind of predict their future to some degree. Trigger questions are one of the best ways to get some knowledge out of somebody. So these are few and far between. I mean, you can't ask these often, and some of these get into legal zones where I have to basically say that, hey, this is just for YouTube entertainment purposes only and not to be used for actual practice. However, you can ask questions like, hey, would you be able to pass a drug test? Or if we ran a criminal history background check on you, would your background show anything that might cause alarm or show up on the background check if we ran a full-length criminal history background check on you? Now, reason I say this is that I have clients I worked with and have worked with, currently work with right now, that actually require background checks. They require drug tests because people are operating machinery and things like that. And for those reasons, you can actually ask someone those questions. Now, if they're going into a job that doesn't do a drug test or doesn't run a criminal history background check, credit check, yada, yada, technically, you should not be asking someone those questions. Now, I'm not going to advise again on whether it's legal or whether it's illegal. Very much something for a lawyer to discuss. I'm not going to advise about it. I'm just going to say that sometimes you can ask those questions, sometimes it's not the best idea. But generally speaking, you can ask someone, would you be able to pass a UA, urinary analysis, or would you be able to pass a full criminal history background check? Would anything come up? And generally in those questions, you will either get, oh yeah, no, that'll be absolutely fine, or you'll get, and they'll kind of explain something that's going to be on there. A good way to get them speaking honestly is just to say like, hey, if we were to run a criminal history background, would there be anything that would be on there? And, just casually, they'll tell you or they won't tell you. And if they don't tell you and you're still sensing there's some hesitancy, like if they say, no, probably not, then say something more like, oh, well, we have a government contract, and so we're actually required to run background checks on every single employee that works for our shop. And given that explanation, it just gives a little bit more sturdiness to what you're asking, and they then cement in their head, oh, they're definitely going to run a criminal history background check on me. I should just say this is going to come up. And sometimes people will come out and say, oh, well, I did have a felony when I was, such and such age. And you can just say, okay, fine. And, oh, I did have a DUI at age, whatever, or in year whatever, and those sorts of things. So trigger questions like those can be very useful for getting that information out of someone. Now, that doesn't mean that we're disqualifying everybody. Somebody could have had, a traffic ticket they're disclosing that they have on a criminal record. Someone could be saying to you that they have domestic violence, though. And, you want to obviously identify the best candidates to send to your clients and just think about those answers when you get them. So trigger questions, think about those. The last and final thing that I'm going to give you is my specific number one rule for qualifying good candidates. Basically, this is just email communication. It's as simple as that. Literally just email communication. The first way we always interact with a candidate is almost always them emailing us from an ad, whether it's on Craigslist or Indeed or it's like ZipRecruiter or it's somewhere, whatever. They're going to email us off of an advertisement, or we're going to email them because we find them through a resume finder or something like that. And that email communication, once it starts, if it's not fluid and continuous and they respond to your emails in time, meaning like, hey, let's talk tomorrow at 4, would you like to do that? And I want a response within 1 to 4 hours that says, yes, 4 tomorrow will work just fine. Or you respond back and say, hey, 4 tomorrow is no good anymore. Would you be able to do, the next day at 12 noon? And they respond and say, oh, yeah, that's totally fine, like 2 hours later. Excellent communication. Bad communication is when you first get a response from them from a job advertisement and they say, hey, super interested in this job. Here's my resume. Check it out. And you check the resume out. It looks great. You respond and say, hey, would love to talk to you. Can you be available tomorrow at 4 p.m.? Crickets for like 2 days. 3 days go by, crickets. You respond back and say, hey, still wanted to talk to you about that position. We're really interested in you. Crickets, nothing. If you hear nothing back after you've responded multiple times to someone over email, the first communication mode they use themselves to connect with you, this is the number one disqualifier for me. If someone's looking for a job, interested in a position, and actually motivated enough to take some action and email you about it, and they don't follow up on email communication, for me, that's an automatic disqualifier, and I 100% will not pursue that individual. They'd have to call me somehow later on, they'd have to email me later on, or they'd have to text me and give me some really good reason why they weren't responding to me over email. I know a lot of people, and most of them check their email at least once a day, at least minimum. And if you're not looking through your email for something as important as a job response when you're supposedly looking for a job, well, that's probably a huge red flag. So that's my number one qualifying item for people, email communication. And it holds true for practically everyone that I've ever placed at any position ever. They've always had excellent email communication back and forth on timing, on logistics, on information, on questions, on anything that I needed. It's always 100% good email communication. So that's my number one qualifier. So that's it in a nutshell, guys. That's how to interview candidates over the phone using those criteria. General demeanor, job-specific knowledge, past history, job information, and then the trigger questions. And then, of course, the number one qualifier, good email communication, being able to communicate back and forth over email in good time. So that's all I've got for you guys today. I hope you're having an awesome Thursday. Yeah, the weekend's almost here, right? So let's go. Let's crush it. I've got to make a ton of phone calls after this video, but I hope you guys are enjoying the rest of your Thursday, and I will catch you tomorrow. See ya.